Denon's AVR-S700W helps usher in a new era of 4K video and networked media. It's part of their new 2014 S-Series line. It does feature HDMI 2.0, it has built-in wireless, and plenty of power, as well as features like Audyssey to make sure that everything sounds great. And of course, all this is easily accessible through an intuitive menu system, quick select buttons, and a very simple graphic setup process. I decided to approach the Denon in the way that most people tend to. I simply plugged it in without even consulting the quick start guide. Setup was the part of this review I was dreading the most, if I'm completely honest. You see, my last experience with Denon had been with a 10-year-old receiver in my dad's theater, and it was just a nightmare. There were counterintuitive menus, the buttons were sort of ambiguous, I had to go several levels deep to get everything set up. Well, things have been improved drastically here, and Denon deserves major kudos for that. Upon starting up the receiver, the user is greeted with a step-by-step graphical setup guide that not only gives instruction on setting levels in Audyssey multi-cue, as well as network connectivity, but also includes positioning speakers, just in case you missed the Audioholics tutorial guide on speaker and sub placement. The only changes I needed to make from the basic setup were to change my front speakers to small and my crossovers to 80 Hz. As an advanced user, I actually liked the simple setup. I had the option of skipping whatever I wanted to, and this is a much needed improvement, so thanks to Denon for that. If you do decide to read the full manual, the thoroughness carries over very well. Now keep in mind, the manual is 250 pages, and I did read every page, so great is my dedication to this review. Part of that length comes from the fact that everything is done in detail, including a whole page on how to apply the wire labels. You know, just in case you were never allowed to play with stickers as a child. The wireless networking features of the Denon AVR-S700W worked great. They offered access to automatic updates as well as media apps. However, more connected users should temper their expectations. Denon does not offer any video apps, no YouTube, no Netflix built into the 700W. This is probably wise, as we tend to think that those features are best added through a Roku or similar streamer box. Instead, Denon has chosen to focus on audio only, including services from Pandora, Spotify, SiriusXM, as well as access to a variety of internet radio stations, podcasts, and your very own audio files, including HD audio up to 192 kilohertz at 24 bits. These features can be accessed through the on-screen menu, although using the front display with the remote control is pretty easy as well. What I most like is that the Denon remembers where I left off. If I was listening to Pandora and I shut the system down, as soon as I turn it back on, I'm listening to Pandora again. I can go from off to streaming a Pandora station with one button press in less than 10 seconds. This effectively puts the nail in the coffin of AM/FM radio and makes your internet content the center of your more connected universe. Bluetooth and Apple AirPlay are also on board to offer even more playback options. With my Moto G smartphone in my pocket, I was able to reach the furthest corners of my house or go outside 30 feet away and not break the signal. I had to go quite a bit further than that to actually lose the connection due to distance and my walls. For power under the hood, Denon's website lists 120 watts into 7 channels with a 1 kilohertz signal, 6 ohms at 0.7% total harmonic distortion. Full bandwidth specs list 75 watts per channel at 8 ohms, though this is likely with only 2 channels driven. Of those 7 channels, 2 can be used to power either rear surround channels, height channels, or a second zone. But keep in mind, the 700W does not have pre-outs for height or a second zone, so you can't do more than one of those options at once. Most home theater owners, myself included, are still only running 5 channels. We don't see folks hurrying to add more speakers for features like Dolby Atmos or height channels or a similar more speakers is better approach. This isn't a huge drawback. If you're honest with yourself about how many speakers you actually need, a 5.1 system with the option of adding 2 additional channels is more than most of us will need, and the 700W fits that bill just fine. Keeping with the theme of simplicity, the back of the Denon AVR-S700W is remarkably sparse. While there are 5 HDMI inputs, there are only 3 digital audio inputs and only 2 analog audio and composite video inputs. And those composite video inputs cannot be upscaled to HDMI. Sorry, VHS hoarders. Personally, I say good riddance, though I will need to find a component to HDMI adapter for my Nintendo Wii. Horizontal 5-way binding posts with a notch for pins or bare wires make the use of any type of speaker wire connector very simple and secure. A big focus in the design of the 700W is on power efficiency. My older Onkyo receiver uses hundreds of watts at idle. The Denon uses only 45. Denon also offers an eco mode, which reduces the available power to the channels, but reduces the idle power down to only 30 watts. This not only saves you money on electricity, but it keeps your receiver running cooler. That being said, I never found the unit hot to the touch, and 45 watts is still sipping power by receiver standards, so I just left the eco mode off. I did appreciate the auto standby feature because I have on several occasions left my receiver running overnight, and that keeps my electric meter spinning. And at 3 hours per day, running 45 watts versus my 300 watt Onkyo, that saves me over $30 a year according to my electric bill. Think of it like getting 3 free months of Netflix or half of a lifetime Plex Pass. Denon has included Audyssey technology for room correction and other functions. Audyssey is a fantastic company, but they have more than a dozen different technologies for home, for mobile, for car. Things can get confusing really quickly. Denon has smartly combined these technologies into 4 simple Audyssey built-in levels for their products, and I really hope that other manufacturers start to follow suit. The AVR-S700W incorporates the bronze level Audyssey package with multi-EQ as the cornerstone. This is the lowest level that Denon incorporates, but it's still much more advanced and effective than what some other manufacturers might include. While there are other auto EQs that use only a single measurement point or apply no EQ to the subwoofer, Audyssey Multi-EQ uses measurements taken at 6 different positions around your seat. This gives you the best response from your system, even if your speakers aren't in the most ideal location. Multi-EQ offers 3 different EQ curves to account for various room sizes and types. In my larger room, I chose the recommended reference curve, which targets a mostly flat response with a slight high-end roll-off. This allows for proper balance of reflected high frequencies in a larger, mostly undamped room. As one might guess, given the distribution of these filters, most of the noticeable change was in the bass frequencies. From my listening position, what started off as pretty good bass became much better with more punch in the drums on Morcheba's Blood Like Lemonade, a tighter kick on My Brightest Diamond's Be Brave, and tighter control of sweeping bass lines on Soul Coughing's Misinformed. Measurements showed that multi-EQ introduced a slight boost between 40 and 60 Hz, accounting for more present bass weight, and another boost between 100 and 200 Hz for a little more mid-bass detail compared to when the multi-EQ was turned off. In addition to Audyssey Multi-EQ, Dynamic EQ is also included, which helps maintain a perceived neutral frequency response even at volume levels that are lower than reference. In other words, movies are mixed at a loud theater level by the men and women that are up there on Oscar night. At home, you might want to listen at a slightly more reasonable level, let's say because you have neighbors or the kids are trying to sleep. Dynamic EQ keeps everything sounding just like it did at the theater, all with proper balance of your lows, mids, and highs, just quieter. Switching this on while listening at -10 dB reasserted some of that bass impact into the mix. My existing AVR is an Onkyo TX SR706, which is comparable to the Denon AVR-S700W. It also has multi-EQ and dynamic EQ and just a touch more power per channel. I was surprised that even with commensurate technology, the Denon sounded a bit more powerful, dare I say bombastic, than the Onkyo. Perhaps I need to rerun Audyssey on that. Audyssey Dynamic Volume is also included, which is an intelligent approach to making loud passages quieter or quiet passages louder. This is perfect for taming obnoxiously loud commercials or making dialogue easier to hear amongst explosions at low listening levels. I flipped this feature on and listened to a few highly dynamic passages, like a recent episode of 24, late at night. Dynamic Volume allowed me to keep dialogue discernible without waking up the entire house, when of course Jack Bauer had to clean up somebody else's mess and save the day. Anyone who's seen my reviews knows that I am a stickler for good remotes, and the Denon remote is okay, mostly. On the downside, it's too light, the buttons are too rigid, they have an unpleasant texture, it's not backlit, it doesn't glow in the dark, it's not programmable or learning, though the AVR-S700W does use HDMI control to minimally work with compatible displays and sources. On the positive side, Denon has relegated many non-essential functions to on-screen settings. It keeps the complement of physical buttons to a minimum. The power button is small but easy to find by touch alone. Commonly used buttons are grouped around the directional pad, and there's a dedicated button for each input, as well as 4 quick select buttons that activate a particular input or service, complete with user-defined audio features. For instance, I can quick select my home theater PC input with lossless surround and the Audyssey reference curve, and then with a single button press, switch to Pandora in stereo with the Audyssey flat curve. Overall, the quick select feature pushes the remote to an above average B-. I'd still find a good learning remote and slip that one in the drawer. The Android Remote app, also available for iOS, offered minimal functionality that for the most part I found better served by the hard button remote. The app did make it easier to navigate networked media without turning on a TV display, and offered one-click access to specific surround modes. However, I did experience occasional crashes and I accidentally backed out of an internet service once or twice. As a free add-on, it's really tough to complain about. Just download it, see if you like it. It's amazing to see, year after year, how receivers at all price points continually offer increased performance and more features. At a street price of less than the $499 manufacturer's suggested retail price, the Denon AVR-S700 really represents an attainable step in a serious performance for anybody who wants high-end sound and high-end features in a simple, easy-to-connect and use package. Fantastic sound quality is surely the standout feature, but next-generation HDMI specs, wireless and Bluetooth connectivity, and energy efficiency make this whole package much sweeter. I would have loved it if the Denon AVR-S700W had been around when I purchased my last receiver, especially at this price. And believe me, based on my experience over the past few weeks, Denon is going to be at the top of my list when I buy my next receiver.